Yeah, it's great to be here today, and I want to thank all of you, and we really appreciate all of you being in Alaska and doing the work that you're doing. It's for DOT, we need you. I mean, there's so many challenges out there that we're facing, and we're looking hard for solutions, but they're big challenges for us, and anything that comes to us from the work that's being done to understand what's happening on the North Slope, across Alaska, south of the Brooks Range, and all these permafrost areas are things that we're going to be dealing with for years and years and years to come. So we're really fortunate that you all are here doing what you're doing. My boss is the governor, and so I also want to say that he supports the work that you're doing. He's a huge advocate for understanding what's happening, whether the climate change that's happening, all of these things that are going on, that we need to find solutions for, because infrastructure for Alaska is so important right now. It's so crucial. We're a state with a declining population. Economically, we're trying to get better, and we want this focus. We're a state with huge wealth and resources. A lot of you were up on, how many people went up on the Dalton and we're up on Prudhoe Bay? Yeah, Prudhoe Bay, the largest oil fields in North America. But then as you go south, huge copper and gold deposits. I don't know if you've heard about this Ambler mining district, but there's another one, where we're looking at infrastructure. How do you access that? Because a lot of these are stranded resources. You go further south, I was just out in another area called the West of Sitna, which is just south in the Alaska range. And it's another huge gold resource down there. And then if folks have heard about this Pebble deposit, it's another $1 trillion resource down there. And what we have in Alaska is just, infrastructure challenges, because whenever we invest, like the Dalton Highway, that's a big investment, and maintenance wise, big investment. So we have to plan for these things and make sure we do them right. And responsible. But we want to build roads up here. That's really what we want to do. So today I wanted to give you all kind of a high level about DOT and how we attack things. We got Mike Lund here, and so I'm going to talk about some things that he's been working on. But it's really to give you a sense of how we're looking at this, because really we're frontline. We're dealing with it every day, and when these things happen, we're trying to find better ways to respond and take care of our business, because our business is to keep Alaska moving, and that's everyday transportation is so important. I mean, we all get here by roads and planes and trains, and we have ferries and all these things. So our job is to keep that going so people can do what they need to do, and we have a good economic structure in the state. So I'll go to the next slide. Maybe we won't keep Alaska moving today. It has been great though. When I started at DOT, Billy was there, and I started in DOT in 2000. And so I'm going on, what is that, 23 years plus with the state of Alaska working at DOT, and it's been awesome. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about just Alaska DOT. We talk about by land, by sea, and by air, because we truly are a multimodal organization. Accessing Alaska's land, resources, and energy potential. We have a 3,500 mile ferry system. We have the largest inland waterway system. So when you guys cross the Yukon River Bridge, and that's part of our waterway system. And in the wintertime, that's a highway for us. We have the Port of Alaska, which is down by Anchorage. That's where all the freight comes for Alaska, and then it's distributed. A lot of the things that go up the Dalton Highway, they come into the Port of Alaska, they get railed to Fairbanks, and then up the Dalton they go. And that's a typical routing of our freight in this state. We have the Anchorage and Fairbanks International Airports. We also have this network of 237 state-owned and operated airports. So all around, even on the North Slope, there's these airports that serve these communities. Oh man, there's a lot of challenges out there with permafrost. Those are big ones for us. And so we're out there maintaining and operating those airports. 17,000 miles of roads and highways. And then of course the Alaska Railroad, 470 miles from Seward to Fairbanks. And they have their own challenges though with permafrost. One thing up here, our transportation corridors, they really serve as energy corridors. And that's, you'll see the Trans-Alaska Pipeline System, but you're also seeing a lot more on the roads right now. And there's a lot of talk up in Prudhoe Bay about natural gas and trucking. And we have active natural gas trucking on our highways too, which further kind of exemplifies the need for solid infrastructure. As one of the things that's happening in the state, down in Cook Inlet, where a lot of the natural gas that feeds Anchorage, they're running out of natural gas. And so everyone's looking for new sources. And that's a big deal for us right now. We're also national leaders in unmanned aerial vehicles. I'll talk a little bit about that. And we're really trying to support broadband expansion. If you look around the state right now, there's broadband going in all over the place, improves connectivity. That's a big deal for how we can improve our data collection and support that. You gotta have the magic fingers. Yeah. Okay, and this is just gives you a sense of Alaska, the size, and what DOT does out there. So the red dots, these are all our M&O, our maintenance and operations stations. So we have people at all those red dots, people and equipment. And one thing we'll talk about in a little bit is when we respond to events, these are the places where people are coming from to respond. We also, the blue dots are all of the 237 airports across the state. And then the marine highway system is this dashed line down here at the bottom. It's 3,500 miles. It's like running from Florida to California is the distance we run with that. And then, of course, our road and highway network. And you can see how limited it really is. One thing, if you were to take, well, okay, so if you take Alaska and you divide it in two, Texas becomes the third largest state in the union, right? And then Texas, though, has 10 times as many roads as Alaska. So that's really shows you how, kind of road poor we are up here in Alaska is how I'd say it. And then just a quick rundown of what we have for infrastructure for DOT. Of course, we have the roads and highways, and we have 80 maintenance stations. The airports, we have 9 ferries, 35 ports of calls. Marine facilities are 16 harbors. And then with that comes these breakwaters. Bridges and tunnels. DOT has tunnels. The Whittier Tunnel down by Anchorage is the longest tunnel in North America. That's operated and owned by DOT. We also have some tunnels down in Ketchikan in Southeast. You won't see a lot of tunnels up here just because of the soils and the permafrost. We have a measurement standards, the folks that go out and make sure that, and I don't know if folks have talked about this, but all these highways, we have weight limitations for trucks. And so we have a group that makes sure that those are being followed. And when we get into seasonal, the road limitations in the springtime, these are the groups that enforce that measurement standards. We also have a big state equipment fleet, public facilities. We run public facilities. We have commercial vehicle enforcement. DOT itself, over 3,000 people. I think we're at like 3,400 across the state. Back one. Yeah. And this is something we're working on right now because as we all recognize in Alaska that the world is changing fast in a lot of ways. I mean, climate is one thing, technology is another. And when we look at infrastructure as kind of foundational to so many of these things, we've been talking about what is it that DOT as an organization, as an agency needs to do to move forward. As an organization and for our transportation network, we really want to be modern. We want to be resilient and we want to be agile. We believe those 3 things help us keep up with the change that's happening and meet our mission. We're also focused on 5 strategic investment areas, and this would be tied to the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. There's about $800 million in highways. We have about $250 to $300 million in airport capital funding, and then also we have another $300 million in ferry funding. So we're at about $1.4, $1.5 billion annually invested in this state for capital projects. And our focus is on safety, economic vitality, the state of good repair, resiliency, and sustainability. And so when you see us invest, this is where we want to focus our investments. And I think that's important, just that context that we're trying to spread out money over a lot of different areas. And so you may not see us investing as much like on the Dalton Highway as we would like, because there's just a limited pot of money and there's a lot of competition in the state for those funds. And then we're also going through an exercise where we're trying to understand the difference between, rural Alaska is a lot different than urban Alaska. We have our surface corridors, which are really our primary highway connections, like the Dalton Highway, like the Parks Highway, those types of things. And we have a new program that we're starting, which is the Waterways program, recognizing how waterways may change for us in the future and how we move freight and people, and that we need to get ahead of that up here. So we're ready for whatever that brings to us. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So a little bit about being modern and just an example of kind of on the ground ways we're trying to do this. This is the Dalton Highway milepost 404. This is from June this past spring. And I think if folks had a chance to stop and see that or talk about it, I mean, we may have lost the road. That was a real concern at that time when this event started. The Sag River up there, of course, right? The channels fill with ice in the spring over the winter, and then the river moves because it doesn't want to go through the ice. And so this is what it starts doing to our road as it migrates to the east. In this particular case, you know, we were able to mobilize a small crew to just get started. And typically that's how it happens for us. We send out our maintenance and operations folks, and they do what they can, but quickly they need to communicate to us, hey, this is too much. We can't do this. Then we go and then Mike oversees the construction folks. We get contractors on board that have the heavy equipment. And unfortunately, when you're on Dalton, this is 10 miles south of Prudhoe, there's contractors typically. And so then we call in the big equipment and we start working this. You'll see Starlink is huge for the state right now. I don't know if a lot of you had heard, but it was probably a couple months ago that there was an undersea cable cut on the fiber, and rural Alaska lost connectivity. I mean, it took them back to, you know, pre-fiber days, and everyone starts ordering Starlink. And pretty soon, one by one, you know, these things are coming up. I was out in Bethel on Tuesday, and our maintenance and operations folks, they had a security system for the airport they couldn't get running, and they had just got Starlink, hooked it up, and within, you know, it's like 6 hours, they're back up and running, and they got better connectivity than they had before, and it's like 1/10 of the cost. So you're going to probably see a lot more of us on that front, but it also allows us when we're out in these kind of areas to have, you know, video conferencing, transmitting like drone footage. I mean, now we have like such better communications, and then we can transfer those and get those moving too. So this has been something that, you know, we've been really working hard for, is responding to these events and being, you know, really good about using technology so we can move information fast, and then we can get the response and the resources and assets we need to a situation fast. This is another one. I think, you know, Mike was pretty busy this spring. This is the Koyukuk #1 bridge, Dalton Highway milepost 188. And you can see this wasn't much after, you know, the other Dalton kind of blew out. You know, then we had scour problem, and all of a sudden we have serious bridge problems that we have to respond to. This is something where, you know, we're fortunate. We have bridge folks. They're in Fairbanks, and we have resources here that, you know, keep us resilient. And again, that comes with healthy contracting communities, having, you know, stockpiles of material. One thing, you know, we learned on the Dalton 404 is rock is so tough. I mean, we have that one site, and I think it's like 260 something up there, the conglomerate pit. Yeah. And that's our rock source. You know, if you go north, I mean, 100 miles plus, you have to haul rock. So these kind of things, you know, being resilient means being prepared, maybe the stockpiles of materials that we need, but also having the resources, the manpower, the equipment when these things happen, that we can keep that going. Because the Dalton Highway, we can't have disruptions. It's just that's the lifeblood. There's a lot at stake there for Alaska's economy. I believe it's like 80% of the state of Alaska budget comes from oil royalties from the North Slope. So it's a primary for us. The other part we like talking about is being agile. And that's just really, you know, being able to move around quick and do things differently, learn new things faster. And what you'll see is at DOT, we're trying to get a hold of these new ways of working, these new tools. Artificial intelligence is something, you know, our governor has told all of us cabinet members, figure it out. Because if we don't figure it out, someone else is going to figure it out for us. And so we're trying to, you know, stay ahead on the artificial intelligence side of things. One of the things that came up the other day that was really interesting, I thought, was there was an idea that we have such a struggle right now with people are retiring, people are leaving, all that knowledge is leaving. But what if you took all of their correspondence, all of their emails, all of their information and gave it to AI, and basically you created an AI bot of someone that retired? So it's things like that, ideas like that, I think, are out there. People are thinking about them. Of course, there's a whole ethics side to that, and that piece that's got to be cared for. But definitely want to stay in tune and find those advantages and be able to do those things. Advanced air mobility is huge. We have a huge partnership between DOT and the university and a quasi, and we're basically looking at how could Alaska, with all this the drones and this autonomous world, improve our communications network, improve our our GPS networks, all these things, to really support this so that these things can happen. Places like Bethel, there's a huge advantage to having that real good instrumentation and information flow, so people know where things are flying around in the world. I mean, there's a huge safety improvement component if we're successful in this. So we're putting a lot of effort, a lot of time, but we also at DOT have taken on the role of kind of the information clearinghouse for drones. So if any of you went and got a drone and you're like, oh, how do I do this in Alaska? You could go to our website. You can go take the quick drone test that you're supposed to take to be able to fly a drone, and all the information is there for you to make sure you can do it safely and you're educated about it. So that's another role that we're taking on in that world. We're really trying to, these new technologies are happening fast. We're trying to keep up with all of that. The other thing that we talk about a lot, and I know the governor is very focused on this, is just Alaska's strategic location in the world. We really want to be a state that is seen as kind of a powerhouse in terms of economy and opportunity. When you look at Alaska's location, of course, Asia is close. It's somewhere when we're looking at things like a gas line and the markets for that, we're looking at Asia. Those are the kind of places that we believe we have that advantage because of our strategic location. We're looking at a lot on the renewable side of things, and could we even be a market? I mean, we're having some discussions right now about where could you access things like high silica content sand for the production of solar panels, and could Alaska do that? Because we have that ability, we have the ports, and we could go places like that. Anchorage International Airport, third in the world for cargo transited right now. And so really that's because of the fuel burn and where these cargo planes are going. It just makes sense to stop at Anchorage and refuel and go. And we're looking for synergies in terms of how could you do other things when they stop in Anchorage? Could we actually have cargo offload and be transported other places and with other modes, things like that. And then a big one, down on the bottom, that's the Port of Nome concept drawing. That's what is currently funded for, I think they got about 350 million that they've got secured for that. And they're working on a new port in Nome to serve, all these needs that are out there. The cruise industry is one that really keeps pushing north. And there's a lot of focus on, well, what happens, as things warm up and these things start opening up, what happens on Alaska's west coast, on the north coast? Yeah. This is kind of an exciting one for us. And I wanted to throw it up here just to give you a sense of, what could be. We're expecting an announcement any day of a new MARAD route designation, and MARAD is the Marine Administration. And so right now, there's a route that goes kind of up southeast, and it goes all the way out to the Aleutians, and then it goes up Cook Inlet to the Port of Alaska. And it's a designated, they call it a MARAD route, which means funding comes along with that. It's a national route, just like we have national highway system routes. It's a maritime route. So we put in for a new designation to go all the way up the west coast of Alaska, all the way across the north coast, past Kaktovik to the Canadian border. And we also asked that it serve these major port areas that go up some of the rivers in Alaska for our inland waterways. And so this will open up a lot of funding opportunities for port and harbor type improvements, and really builds upon that waterways program that we're trying to establish. But we do expect any day that will become an official designation for the nation. This is just the example. This is the Red Dog port, and that just kind of gives you an example of what an industrial port kind of looks like compared to what that Nome port looks like as well. So that's a piece that's been there for quite some time. That's just north of Kivalina, Alaska. And this is always a good one just for kind of some of the challenges we face at DOT. Barrow, Alaska, population about 4,000, Kotzebue, Alaska, population of 3,000. Those are true Arctic communities above the Arctic Circle. And you can see some of the challenges we always face. We have the ocean, you know, typically there's like in Kotzebue, it's a lagoon on the inside. You'll see this is actually a section, we rebuilt this coast used to go like this, but the runway wasn't long enough, and the other end ends in water too. So we actually rebuilt all this out here to extend the runway. But whenever we get into these situations, you know, we have community on one side. We'll typically have, you know, these challenges with water. A lot of times there will be a cemetery on one end of the airport. I don't know why that is. It always seems to be. But that's when we look to expand these airports, those are the kind of challenges. And one of the things, you know, we're hearing about more and more is, you know, what's happening in Russia, what's happening globally. And we do get asked by, you know, our military folks, you know, what would it take to extend a Barrow or a Kotzebue to 8,500 feet? Because that's the length for an F-35. But you can see the challenges there. These are tough questions because we've expanded our infrastructure to a reasonable extent, pretty much as much as we could at this point. Alaska Airlines wants 6,500 feet, and that's really what we've been able to do with a lot of expensive projects. And then lastly, just looking to the future, you know, really for Alaska, energy and resources, that's really what is going to drive our economy up here. You'll see we're well positioned to compete for federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act funds. We have high energy costs. We have climate impacts. We're dependent on multimodal transportation. We have a lot of tribal and Alaska Native corporations up here, and there's a lot of eligibilities associated with that. There's this Justice 40 out there, eligible communities. We're all working on what that means. But again, we have a lot of those types of communities up here. So we do feel like we're well positioned. But access to matching funds across all eligible recipients, whenever you have these big funding programs, there's a significant amount of match, and a lot of local governments just don't have that kind of cash. Technical capacity and workforce availability, that's huge for us right now. We're really struggling, especially on like the mechanics, the equipment operators, the maritime industry. Really, you know, it's a tough time right now for finding, you know, people to do the work. Statewide coordination, communication, prioritization is really tough in a state this big with the geography like we have, but that's getting better with technology. And then we always have financing and permitting roadblocks or delays. We're always working through those. But really, you know, you'll see on the top, you know, we have oil, we're working on solar, and there's some amazing things going on in solar, even above the Arctic Circle. Folks are making solar work. The wind farms across the state, you'll see more and more of those. And then of course we have our, you know, the hydro, which in the state down in Southeast Alaska is a huge component of the energy portfolio. And then in terms of resources, yeah, there's a lot of work going on proving up resources throughout the state. But all those things need infrastructure. And so roads seem to be a critical piece just because of the economics of a resource development or moving energy. And so I think what you're going to see from the DOT, and I think you're going to see this more across the nation, is transportation corridors becoming more energy data corridors, that we have that space that really can be used for transportation in a broad term, not just vehicles. You know, DOTs used to be kind of known as highway departments. We're transitioning and kind of evolving into transportation departments. So it's not just vehicles, freight, you know, it's pedestrians, it's bicycles, it's four-wheelers, it's energy, it's broadband, it's the whole thing. So that's where I believe we're headed, and it's pretty exciting times, to be honest. So I'm pretty excited about that. And that's what I got.
Nice.